Hello all, and thanks for tuning in for this paranormal pit stop. Tonight, we'll be exploring an iconic and historic former parish-turned-ghost village that's located between Steeple and East Lulworth along the Jurassic Coast in South Dorset, England. That, despite damages it sustained over its many years, looks very much the same as it did during the time of its abandonment over a half-century prior. Rumored to harbor a host of chilling paranormal activity across its grounds. Are you sure you're ready to brave the history and hauntings of the ex-community of Tyneham? Historically and archaeologically speaking, habitation and use of lands now holding Tyneham date all the way back to Iron Age Britain, which spanned roughly from 800 BCE to 50 CE. From the 1st through the 4th century, the region was utilized heavily by the Romans, and more modern findings include a medieval settlement and strip fields placed just to the south of the village's chalk ridge. Incidentally, documentation in the Domesday Book of 1086 makes mention of a community on site called Tyneham, which was, during this period, owned by the legendary William the Conqueror's half-brother, Robert, Count of Mortain. Notably, Tyneham's historic St. Mary's Church was initially constructed in the late 13th century, and as the surrounding populace grew, it would welcome many alterations, reconstructions, and additions in eras to come. Traditionally, the village of Tyneham was always owned by one controlling family, who would in turn lease out land for villagers to live on. In 1683, one Nathaniel Bond of Luton would purchase the entirety of the estate from the Williams family, after which Tyneham would remain in the hands of the Bond family moving forward. In 1860, the family would establish the Tyneham School. Unfortunately, however, this school was eventually acquired by the rectory, and due to a lack of pupils, would be forced to close its doors in 1932. Just before Christmas of 1943, this weathered old village expanse and an encompassing 7,500 acres were requisitioned by the War Office for use as a training grounds and firing stage, and while this measure was meant only to last through the duration of World War II, in 1948 a compulsory order was placed on the site, resulting in it having served under military use to this day as part of the Lulworth Ranges. Sadly, over the years, a number of the old community's structures would fall into disrepair, or would see damages resulting from shellings. However, interests would begin noting the point's historical significance. In 1975, the Ministry of Defense would begin opening the village up to the public on select days, and eventually, the aforementioned church and school were preserved as museum sites. More recently, in 2008, Tyneham Farm was reopened to the public, and both conservational and preservational works across its boundaries remain ongoing. In the present, while Tyneham remains off-limits through a good bulk of the year, it does still open to the general public regularly and offers its fair share of events. Oh, and on a cautionary note to any of our viewers considering exploring Tyneham, Warbarrow, or any other areas touching the expanse, the Lulworth Range is an active MOD site, and in most areas, visitors are required to stick to paths and trails marked with yellow posts at all times. But these cautionary measures are definitely worth the trouble, as the region is rich in historic sites, abandoned buildings, hiking trails, secluded beaches, and breathtaking viewpoints. Surprising exactly no one at all, the expanse of Tyneham and its surrounding lands are rumored to harbor a literally countless number of ghosts, resulting from natural deaths, accidents, illness, from brutal combat, murder, and more, all that occurred through the area spanning back to positively ancient times. Incidentally, the shelling of areas holding more than 30 barrows dating back to the Iron Age is thought also to have awakened additional presences, and both MOD personnel and visitors who have braved this sleepy ghost community's bounds have reported disembodied voices heard from ruined structures, phantom footsteps detected from vacant or locked spaces, and ghostly glows spied floating near or just over various burrows, where many describe feeling unwelcomed. The full-bodied apparitions of World War II soldiers have been sighted resting, marching, or seemingly attempting tasks from lives since lost. Those who have ventured through the old schoolhouse have told of disembodied giggles and of the pitter-patter of little feet heard circling. And strangely, an old village phone booth is rumored to ring from time to time, with various connected legends claiming the caller could be anything from a demon to a deceased relative. Sadly, a number of villagers had invested years into family homes at Tyneham, and when they were forced to leave amidst the war, they did so under the illusion that they'd be allowed to return, only to never set foot on their cherished lands again. Additionally, generations of these villagers' ancestors were laid to rest within the local cemetery, where they themselves had previously intended to be buried until their untimely and unwanted evictions. Chillingly, it's told now that at night, one can watch the spectral forms of these villagers who died elsewhere as they return to their cherished town site, and also commonly the spirits of those buried in the cemetery as they rise to greet their long-lost kin. Several paranormal investigations of Tyneham have yielded high EMF levels, a slew of EVPs, including common recordings of one presence who calls itself Warren, unexplained screeching and instances of stones being thrown inexplicably, and orbs in strange forms in photography and video, while others have reported spook lights sighted through weathered ruins, extreme cold spots, and the constant feelings of being watched, of being followed, or of being touched or brushed up against by someone or something unseen. Reported across the whole of Tyneham and confined to no area in particular are encounters with both shadowy manifestations and with full-bodied apparitions in clothing stretching millennia past. And interestingly enough, several run-ins with more ancient-looking phantoms have left witnesses with a distinct feeling that the resident spirits aren't happy over the land's mistreatment. Near the old Baltington farm, it's told that long ago, a dairymaid ended her own life and was laid to rest under the shade of an oak tree bearing the carving of a coffin in its bark. The spirit of this maid is often spied by those passing, and is usually described as wistful, or as bearing a look of eternal sorrow. A final legend tying itself to both Tyneham and Lulworth tells that the countryside and forest separating them is roamed by a phantom hound that viciously prevents any who attempt to cross the region from reaching their destinations, and that's been known to stalk the living or even chase and attack those caught out alone on foot after dark. So to the awesome Ministry of Defense personnel that we spoke to earlier, who's holding down the fort out that direction, watch your six if you go for any nighttime hikes. Thanks for joining us for this paranormal pit stop. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, subscribe to our channel, like this upload, and share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you all next time.